Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Of course, are facing once again some quite challenging times in our country specifically, but I would say the region as well. But it is so important to look at what's going on in Kosovo as part of the bigger picture. This is not just about Kosovo. This is also not just about our region. This is about Europe as a continent, and this is about the security of the entire European continent. For that reason, it is extremely important that we have as much of an attention of our Western allies as possible to make sure that the support that is given to the Republic of Kosovo as a country that is 100% aligned with every foreign and security policy decision of the European Union is robust. Now, the more specific events that are right now happening in the north are not isolated to what has been happening in Kosovo for the past 24 years. Since 1999, Serbia, and especially in these past 10 years, Serbia has been trying to keep hostage the Serbian community that lives in Kosovo, especially those who live in the north. In fact, 2/3 live in the south, east, and west. They are well integrated in these municipalities, but the problem with the north is that it's bordering Serbia, and of course it is much easier for Serbia to extort its influence, but I would rather say intimidation against the Serbs who live in the north. Now lately, because the dialogue was going well and there was a great potential because of the German-French proposal, which was accepted, and of course Kosovo was immediately ready to sign. Of course, Vučić went back to his old strategy, which is creating crisis after crisis to block the success in the implementation of the dialogue agreements. For that reason, of course, the latest in the north was initially caused by him forcing the 4 mayors in these municipalities to resign. And then according to the constitutional obligations that we have in our system, we had to announce new elections. Now, to show flexibility, of course, I postponed these elections for 4 months so that we can give more time, both for security reasons, but also give more time for preparation. But even after 4 months, because of the public calls and intimidation by the Serbian president, no candidate dared to join the lists and run for these elections, which meant that at the end we faced an involuntary boycott. The results were mayors with 3 to 4%, which of course we understand it's very low legitimacy, but in Kosovo's system there's no legal requirement when it comes to the percentage that is required for someone to be elected. Now, of course, there were different instruments in the hands of the Serbs that could have been used if they wanted to contest the legitimacy of the mayors who were elected. But they didn't use any of those democratic constitutional means to do that. And when the time came for the mayors to take over office, they were attacked by a bunch of criminal gangs who, of course, then continued by attacking NATO soldiers. And many of them have been injured. Unfortunately, some of them have been injured quite gravely. I want to express our gratitude to all of the NATO soldiers who have been putting their life on the line so that they can protect safety and security in my country, and they have been doing this for the past almost 25 years, not just lately. We very much appreciate their contribution, not just their presence there, and at the same time to express my sympathies for those that were injured during these very unfortunate times. At the same time, I understand that in order for the de-escalation of this situation, the most crucial point right now is that we work together with our partners. For a small country like Kosovo, but with the invasion of Ukraine, we should understand that for any country out there, our strength lies in our partnerships, in our alliances. We need to make sure that our actions are coordinated. We need to make sure that we work together and we defend what we've built together. because Kosovo's independence, its sovereignty, its freedom, and its Euro-Atlantic path, of course, depends on the will of our people, on the work of the institutions and our reforms, but at the same time, on the trust of our partners. So, as president, I'm engaged very much into working with our transatlantic partners, both the European Union and the United States, to make sure that a solution is found so that, of course, we can also deal with the root cause of the problem, because otherwise, if we just find quick fixes to the current situation, then we're going to face with crisis after crisis caused by Vučić and his criminal groups. Now, one very essential point here is that there should be no impunity for those who committed violence against NATO. These criminal groups must face justice. Already they had large criminal files even before attacking NATO. They are identified. We know who they are. NATO knows who they are. The European Union knows who they are. Many of them actually came over from Serbia. They're not even Kosovo Serbs. And they are part of the institutions of Serbia as police officers from cities within Serbia. So this is not just a test for Kosovo institutions any longer and the rule of law efforts that we have. It's also a test for NATO to make sure that there's no impunity, but there is a facing with justice of people who have been causing violence unprovoked, in an unprovoked way, against NATO soldiers, against journalists in Kosovo, both Albanian journalists as well as Serbs and internationals, and against civilians. Now the situation is very complex, but I'm confident that now that Kosovo has shown its willingness since about 2 weeks ago when I was in Moldova after meeting with Chancellor Scholz and President Macron, and then discussing with our US counterparts, we have shown our willingness to organize new elections in Kosovo. That, of course, is important under the conditions that Serbs participate. So we have asked for the support of our partners to make sure that Vučić does not illegally interfere with the elections of another country, as he did last time, and that he doesn't pressure Kosovo Serbs to not participate. So far, we haven't received a response. I mean, Vučić has been saying that he has conditions and so on and so forth, but it is very important that when we announce new elections that we ensure democratic participation. Otherwise, what's the point of entering into another vicious cycle of announcing new elections and then getting 3 to 4% again? So that is crucial. Secondly, when it comes to the international community's request to have police forces withdraw, special units withdraw, Kosovo has already proposed that we have a joint security assessment together with KFOR and ULEX, where based on that new assessment, and of course which needs to be in parallel with our joint rule of law efforts to find the criminals who committed the violence against NATO and others, but then we can go ahead with a proportional withdrawal depending on the security situation. So right now it is a couple of details that have not been agreed upon, but I think we just need to sit down and talk, always under the very basic principle that we are partners and allies. And in that sense, I'm confident that we can come to a joint solution, again, one that must be long-term and deals with the root cause of the problem, which is twofold, in fact. One is political and very much relates to the dialogue between Kosovo and Serbia, where we need a balanced approach from the European Union. But second is very much a rule of law problem. The question is whether a democratic country should just close its eyes in front of a bunch of criminal thugs that have been intimidating and terrorizing citizens in the north, and lately have also attacked NATO. Or should it act upon the basic principles of democracy and rule of law and make sure that everyone faces justice? So these are the challenges that we're facing. And this way, I believe that if we walk together with partners, we will certainly be successful. And that's exactly what I'm working on. But perhaps not to go into more detail, I'd like to leave more space for questions.
What is your impression Are they interfering? Are they supporting you? Or are they just telling Kosovo and Serbia for de-escalation?
We consider Germany to be one of the greatest supporters of our successes, of our European integration path. Obviously, Germany, like other European Union members, are calling for de-escalation measures. So they have asked, as I said, for new elections to be organized in Kosovo, for both parties to go back to the dialogue table and constructively engage to fully implement the latest agreements and a number of other measures. As I said, the vast majority of requests are okay for the Republic of Kosovo. For a couple of details, we really need to discuss them so that we know what's the best way for their implementation in a way that it would not cause long-term damage to Kosovo's sovereignty. So I think it's more an issue of how we interpret and how we properly implement some of these issues rather than a big disagreement. What is important is that we need to sit down and talk to one another and find the way forward as soon as possible. But the latest escalatory measures by Serbia are extremely serious, with the kidnapping of the 3 police officers. It's insanity what is happening, and I just saw that Germany has also asked for the immediate and unconditional release of these 3 police officers. I want to thank your foreign minister for this clear statement. Equally, the United States and the United Kingdom have asked Serbia to immediately release the officers. So I mean that is something that must happen right now. And then I believe that next week, at least this is what it was announced by Mr. Borrell, both Kosovo and Serbia will be invited to Brussels for talks, and I hope that further details will be discussed and agreed there.
You're welcome to raise your hands and ask questions. Please, Anila.
Anila Shuka, Deutsche Welle. Anila Shuka, Deutsche Welle. Are you satisfied with the role of the EU, Mr. Borrell and Mr. Lajčák, in the dialogue with Serbia?
The French-German proposal was made. It was put on the table. Obviously, there were parts of it that we were very much dissatisfied with. Nevertheless, we trusted our allies and partners that if we make these compromises, there will be other articles in that agreement which will help Kosovo and Serbia at least pave the way towards mutual recognition. So when Kosovo started discussions on this plan, we offered to sign it so that, it's legally binding and implementable. Serbia did not want to sign it. Serbia rejected to sign it. Secondly, when the annex of this agreement was agreed upon, Serbia, we again offered to sign it. Serbia rejected its signature. And then the European Union said, let's say that both parties agreed based on of course, the rules of the Vienna Convention and the law of the treaties, but without signature. And they said that it's legally binding nevertheless. Less than 24 hours after that statement by the European Union, Vučić came on his national TV and his other media, and he said, I'm not going to implement. I never agreed to the German-French proposal. He said, I'm just going to pick and choose what I want to implement. So he wants to implement what he likes, but not the rest. There was never any statement from the European Union with regards to this. A couple of days after, despite of Article 4 of that agreement, which requires Serbia to not object to Kosovo's membership in any international organization, Serbia voted against Kosovo's membership in the Council of Europe. And not only that, they also lobbied against, and they also attacked countries who did not vote against us. They attacked Ukraine, they attacked Greece, and others who were supportive. Then they even didn't go to the Reykjavik summit, and they didn't become part of the declaration on Ukraine because of that, just because they did not reject our membership in the Council of Europe. So there is a long list of violations from Serbia, which we can send to you. These have all been confirmed through our embassy. Perhaps if you share your contacts afterwards, there have been constant violations in these past 2 months since March 18th of this agreement by Serbia, but never so far did we hear kind of a statement from the European Union saying, yes, this is a violation of the agreement. So I think this is kind of encouraging Serbia to actually not care about the process, and it's hurting the credibility of the process. So we trust the dialogue process. We want to move on with the dialogue process. We actually have proposed that we have meetings every single month so that it's more intensive, therefore it produces something more positive. But we need to make sure that there is a balanced approach and that parties are treated based on the principle of equal footing. So there are a lot of examples where Serbia's violations are being tolerated. Now, I understand the greater motive of the international partners trying to bring Serbia closer to the West. Nevertheless, it's very important that if a party behaves like that and simply bashes on you 24 hours after they say that they agree, and they go publicly and they say, no, we haven't agreed to anything and we're not going to implement, it should mean something. It should mean something for the credibility of the process. So I hope that there will be a lessons learned process, and measures will be undertaken to kind of strengthen the credibility of the dialogue.
Have a great motivation to have Serbia near in the path of the European Union. What are the compromises that Kosovo is ready or is willing to do to reach an agreement that can function with Serbia?
We already have an agreement. That agreement has been reached in Brussels and Ohrid. We shouldn't lose sight of that. The party that is not, well, it's not because of our fault that it's not functional. It's Serbia that it's not implementing, and I already mentioned many of these violations that they are committing. So Serbia's violations should not be at the expense of Kosovo. I mean, so the agreements are there, and in fact, that's not the only one. There are about 40 agreements that have been achieved in Brussels. For example, many talk from time to time about the 2013 agreement on the Association of Serb Majority Municipalities. But that agreement has a lot of other issues within it. So if we partially read it, yes, the ASMM is there, but there are other conditions for Serbia there. For example, the precondition for creating the ASMM was for Serbia to dissolve all of its illegal and parallel structures in Kosovo, especially security structures. That is an obligation from 2013. What happened in these 10 years is they have never been stronger. So we need the EU to ask Serbia to fulfill this precondition. Because if Vučić continues to finance and politically support these illegal structures, of course, no one should just give him a green pass for violating the 2013 agreement, the same way that he's violating the current 2023 agreement. So the problem is not the lack of agreements. The problem is not the lack of dialogue. The problem is implementation. I mean, concessions, to be honest, it would take us days if I start talking about the concessions that Kosovo has made. Since the Ahtisaari negotiations, they have brought us to the brink of non-functionality as a country. Just to mention, because we talk a lot about enhanced minority community rights. And I often ask, whenever we talk to fellow Europeans, in which ones of your countries a minority that comprises 3 to 4% of the population has guaranteed seats through which they have a veto power over any constitutional amendment? There's no other European country. If 10 Serb MPs out of 120 don't want to do that, so 10 can block any education reform, any reform in human rights, any reform on religious rights, any law that relates to local elections. So we cannot even reform our electoral system if 3 to 4% of the population don't agree. And these advanced rights are given to them not only at the national level, but also at the local level. So the point is, Kosovo's constitution, even as we speak, is the most advanced constitution on European soil. On European soil. There's no Council of Europe member that has a more advanced constitution when it comes to minority community rights. Serbs in Kosovo need to be allowed to use these rights without pressure from Belgrade, to use them, to utilize them the same way that the Constitution and the laws have given them. Additionally to the Constitution and the laws, there's a long list of concessions that we have made in the Brussels dialogue. You would be really surprised to read some of the things in those agreements that have been reached in these past 12 years. So when I say it brought us to the brink of being a non-functional state, I absolutely mean it. That doesn't mean that we're not ready to do more. We are ready to do more. Vučić stated, I quote, "With these missiles, we can attack deep within enemy territory within a perimeter of 9 kilometers. So they utilize minority communities, they abuse them, they make them resign from their jobs in the institutions, they create false flag operations, they enter little green men in uniforms, a lot of weapons." It's exactly a copycat of what's happening in North Kosovo. The question is, are we going to prevent that scenario? I think our Western allies are interested to prevent it, which is why we really want to work together with each and every one of them to make sure that Russia's destabilization efforts are not materialized by Serbia to an extent that they want them.
In the beginning of your country, the euphoria for EU was great, and now it gets smaller and smaller. Why?
In fact, according to the latest poll, over 90% of the people of Kosovo believe that the EU path is the only way. Kosovo is the most pro-EU and the most pro-NATO country that one can be. Probably there's more EU euphoria in Kosovo than in EU member states. Yes, there was a lot of frustration with the lack of visa liberalization for many years. Now that process is done. But we have never looked elsewhere. We have never flirted with other powers. We have never allowed any other malign powers. There's practically no influence of Russia in Kosovo. Kosovo is the only country in the Western Balkans that is not part of the China Road and Belt Initiative. So we've been very effective in making sure that we keep the country in that exact same strategic orientation that existed since decades ago. So, of course, there are from time to time frustrations, but that doesn't change our orientation or the vision that it's the will of our people. Over 90% truly believe on our Euro-Atlantic integration path.
What about the neighbor countries? For instance, Minister President Rama and so about their position. Are they supporting you enough or not?
I believe it is extremely important that we work together during these challenging times. Now, although sometimes there are issues on which we believe we should act or work on differently, apart from Serbia, all of the other countries in the Western Balkans, all of the other 5 truly believe in Euro-Atlantic integration. So Kosovo, North Macedonia, Albania, Montenegro, Bosnia-Herzegovina, all of them have chosen the Euro-Atlantic path, and there's no question about it. In the case of the 4, so Kosovo, Montenegro, North Macedonia, and Albania, all 4 of us, the Quad, we are also 100% aligned with the EU on all foreign and security policy decisions. So I think each and every one of our countries truly deserves, including Bosnia-Herzegovina, this Euro-Atlantic path, but we need a clear roadmap. Apart from just the rhetoric about the European perspective, there needs to be concrete steps on how we move on, which is why we need to sit down and work with one another. When there are things that we disagree on, we should overcome them, because on the big picture, we agree. There's only one country that doesn't agree on the big picture, and that is Serbia. So that is the source of this stability. I hope that will change in the years to come, although I'm not that optimistic given what they do, but that doesn't mean that we should give up hope.
Next question.
Could you maybe enlighten us of what this criticism is aimed at and why is it coming now? Of
course, it's related very much to what happened on the 26th of May. when the mayors wanted to go to their offices, and because of attacks by these criminal groups, the police did its job, which is protect civilians who are under attack. And because that led to a lot of violence, of course, then this becomes more than just about a mayor. It's more than just about a municipality. It's about regional peace and security. So, to try to answer your question, it's again part of the bigger picture. While the war in Ukraine is ongoing, and while all of the democratic countries are united into facing Russia, to have other threats to regional peace and stability is quite a dangerous outcome. So I think it's more of a concern. And then, of course, in order to prevent these kind of things from happening, they look at Kosovo as a partner. So I think of course, Kosovo police acted based on Kosovo constitution and laws that day. But nevertheless, we need to make sure that every single action that we understand can become part of the larger regional peace and stability issues to be fully coordinated with partners. Because I was speaking a little earlier on with a longtime friend of Kosovo. I'm not going to mention the name, but he said, in any defense strategy, the most important ingredient is trust. So when you see how fragile the security situation is in our region, and at the same time you face a nuclear power, which Russia is, it's important to have trust among partners, which is why I strongly believe, as I said at the beginning, our strength truly lies in our partnerships, especially during these challenging times. We must align with partners and allies because this is part of the collective defense. Nothing is national any longer. Nothing is just national. Nothing is just Kosovo. It's part of our collective defense, and especially the history of Kosovo demonstrates that. I mean, as I always say, Kosovo is an embodiment of what democracies can achieve when they stand together against tyrannies. And right now it's one of those moments. We are in a critical juncture as a continent, so we need to make sure that we work together, even sometimes if we have to swallow our pride and things that we truly believe might not look good, but for the collective good and the long-term solutions, and especially if we want the success of our actions and their them to be long-term, we must work together with allies. So I'm confident and hopeful that the disagreements that are present right now will be overcome in the spirit of trust. And even if people believe that what Kosovo did on the 26th was a mistake, we should not lose sight of a couple of very basic facts. One, who committed the violence? It wasn't Kosovo police. It was a bunch of criminal thugs. We know who pays them, we know who trains them, we know who gives them the weapons. All of our international partners know what kind of weapons they were used that day. They're not produced in Kosovo, and they're not produced in any of the NATO countries. They're only produced in Serbia. Secondly, let's not lose sight of another very basic fact. These are Kosovo property, Kosovo buildings within Kosovo territory. We did not attack anyone in the other side of the territory. We did not attack another country. And thirdly, even if we assume that it was a mistake, it is extremely important, which again, as I said, the police officers acted based on the Constitution and the law. It is important that we don't lose sight of who your true partners and allies are. And I say this from a mutual perspective. For us, we should never forget who stood by us in the good and the bad days. But also the other side, Kosovo is a partner to Germany. Kosovo is a trustworthy partner to Germany, a trustworthy partner to the United States and to others. We have proven that over and over and over again on a daily basis for the past couple of decades, even before we became independent. And in that sense, I think it is absolutely high time to sit down together and overcome these difficulties. I don't think agreements can be achieved by attacking one another in the media and all that. But if we sit down and talk, we can certainly find a way through for these very last bits, because for the vast majority of things, we do already agree when it's new elections and so on. But we need to discuss the way how to fully implement them so that there is the democratic participation in elections and other details. So maybe this is just a little bit of background. I'm not sure if it answers your entire question.
Is this support still relevant, or is it getting smaller?
From Austria?
Yes.
Austria has been very supportive of Kosovo throughout every challenge that we've faced. Right now, of course, just like other EU member states, at least from what I've read, they have the same position as Germany and other countries. I wouldn't say that it has changed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let me ask you about your predecessor. How is Mr. Hashim Thaçi?
So there is an ongoing trial that is happening at The Hague for former President Thaçi and, of course, former Speaker Veseli and former Speaker Krasniqi, Member of Parliament, and so on. We, of course, cannot predict the final outcome of the trial. I'm very much confident that justice will prevail. And we also know what the truth is, because it happened in front of the eyes of the entire world. The people of Kosovo were an oppressed people that were fighting for their freedom and for their independence. On the other side, we have Milosevic's genocidal regime committing some of the most horrendous crimes since Second World War. It happened in front of the eyes of the world. Nothing can erase that history, and all efforts for history revisionism, I believe, sooner or later will fail. We were given assurances by European institutions that this is not going to happen. At least until yesterday, this is exactly what we've heard. And what we were told, not just heard from others, but of course, speaking to European institutions.
A very last question.
Sure.
In Berlin, the Special Olympics take place. Is there a Kosovo team, and are you visiting and supporting your team?
Yes, I'm absolutely supporting the team. I will be with them tomorrow. I look forward to supporting them. Part of my priorities and the presidential agenda has been supporting all of our sports people, but mostly the most vulnerable, those who have been excelling despite the challenges that they face, people with special needs. So I will definitely be there with my team tomorrow, hoping for their great success. But I think their mere presence here in Berlin is an outstanding success on behalf of the Republic of Kosovo.
Thank you very much. We wish you also success for the team and
Thank
also
you.
for you. And I would like to know, when you are so young and president and you have always been the best, what's the next after president?
So I don't really ever think about what's next for me. I think about what's next for my people, and I'm looking at them and just the brilliant young minds in the Republic of Kosovo. I'm absolutely optimistic for my country.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Let's stay in contact in any function that you have in the future.
We certainly will.
May I ask you?
Of course. Thanks. I I look
Kosovo.
forward to reading it. I'm
But
sorry
this
I
is for
don't.
you.
Thank you so much.
You certainly have somebody around who reads German.
Yes, our ambassador.
Well, he knows it. I presented the book.
This one.
Thank you, everyone. Professor?